Hey guys, and welcome back to the Embodied Divinity podcast. Douglas and I are in the middle of a three-part series all about manifestation and the law of attraction. So last week we talked to you all about the unique process that Douglas shared, and we really got into the vibration, attraction, and emotions of the law of attraction. Today we're going to do something I'm really excited about. We're going to dive into some of the myths around the law of attraction and some of the ways we can get caught up in all of these external things people are saying, all of the things that are trying to make us feel bad or wrong about the feelings that we're feeling, and really just help you get some clarity on how to really use the law of attraction in the way that it was meant to, in the way, and really the only way that it can operate to its fullest potential. So, Douglas, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me again. I love
Yeah.
it.
So tell me why you're so excited about today's episode, because you have a lot of passion around this topic.
So I'm sure some of it is from the vibration of control. So I'm not like there's no way that this is just 100% pure loving vibration, that I'm bringing to the table today. It's just that it's one of those deals of like, I've been inside this information again since I was 19, right? I'm 46 now. So many years. And so I've gone through all the nuances, all the little layers that you go through as you discover things, right? All the layers of, no, I need to keep searching. All the layers of, no, that can't be true, but maybe it is. All the, oh, there's no way this is going to work. Oh my God, maybe it is going to work. Oh, that like all the nonsense that goes on in your head as you discover things and keep going and keep going and keep going. The gist of it is there's a lot of people that talk about let's just say the law of attraction, or a lot of people that talk about universal law. Okay. And again, I'm not saying I know things 100%. I'm a human being. There's no way I could know everything 100%. Impossible. But what I do know is I have a really strong idea of how the energy is working inside the universe, understand what emotions represent, and how you can use them to guide yourself in your life. And the one thing I do know is nobody else can tell you what your emotions are representing for you in any one moment of time. You got to get good at that on your own. You can use people to assist you. You can always ask for opinions, thoughts, guidance, suggestions. But in the end, it's your connection with yourself that matters the most. And it'll always be that way. And so when people talk about things like, for example, like I'll just hit the main one, right? This thing called spiritual bypassing, which to be honest with you, I don't even know the exact definition of it. So maybe you can say what you believe is the definition of that. But in this world, there's no bypassing of anything because it's a vibration. And whatever you're emitting is being attracted to you, and you know what's being attracted to you by how you feel. There's no way you get around that part of the universe. Okay. And so there is no bypassing of anything. You always have to work through vibration, frequency, emotions, attraction. Like you always got to do that type of work. So that's the start. I know that's a pretty strong start, but
No, I mean, I think it's great because honestly, the mainstream um premise of law of attraction really fucked me up on my spiritual journey because
mm,
I had really severe trauma that I was dealing with. And so here I am dealing with my trauma. And my very first mentor, this was 16 years ago, she just kept telling me, your bank account's empty because you're so unhappy all of the time. If you don't just start telling yourself to be happy, nothing's ever going to shift for you. But she wasn't trauma informed. So she wasn't telling me that my feelings were valid, that I could feel them. She was
uh,
saying, you have to stop this right now. So I was here, like in the depths of this pain. But
wow.
instead of feeling it, I'm sitting here telling myself, you should just be happy. If you were happy, this wouldn't be happening. And so that's for me what spiritual bypassing is when somebody's kind of sugarcoating what you're going through and
Yes.
not allowing what we talked about last time, which was you get to feel and transmute these heavy emotions. You get to fully experience them. And then once you have, you get to shift to a higher vibrational thought. And that might go from grief to anger. Anger's still higher than
Yes.
grief,
Yes.
right? And so I think that's the biggest part is like this premise that I always have to be happy. I always have to be positive. Otherwise, I'm just attracting shit into my life.
So first off, once you started talking, I've had chills in through my body the whole time you were just speaking. So like I know for sure like what we're about to talk about is this is good. And I love what you just brought up because it is, I think, at the forefront of why so many people get turned off by the statement law of attraction
Yeah.
or anything dealing with universal law. And I want everybody out there to know when I talk about law of attraction or universal law, it is not coming from a place of go get your stuff. It's not coming from a place of manifestation. It's simply coming from a place of knowledge base of the foundation of how energy is being exchanged between you and the living beings around you and the universe you live inside of and you and the relationship you have with the things that you want in life eventually and all those things. And so what you just brought up is amazing because one of the main deals inside of this whole is law of attraction real is there's sometimes not a clear correlation between you and why you got what you got in life. Meaning we can say it like as human beings intellectually we can say, "Oh, I see why that happened because you did this and so this showed up." Great. And now everyone wants to say, "Fuck you." Right?
Mhm.
And I would understand why. Okay. But that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is yes, sometimes you can make educated guesses on why things are showing up in your life. But we guarantee you your emotions are not playing games with you. There's something you absolutely want to know and tune in and learn how to feel. So, in no way, shape, or form would we, you and I, people, that we're speaking with now, we would never want you to deny how you feel, but we want you to learn how to let what you feel guide you. That is the deal. If you want to release past trauma, yes, let your emotions be your guide, not your downfall,
Yeah.
not your reason of staying in the trauma. Now, another conversation will come up. Well, then how do I release the trauma? Or are you telling me how I'm supposed to? And again, I'd say no way. I'm not a person who sits here and tells you, if you do this, you will then feel this or you will get this. No, because I'm not the one with the trauma. You are. So we together, like as a coach, that's my role. How do I help you identify or see or grow from or discover or whatever the wording is? How do we do it together? Because I'm in support of you, not against you or here to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
There's
I think that's powerful. And it is just, exactly what we've been talking about is they are your guides and they are there to show you the ways that you can change and evolve if you choose to. And also, one thing I learned on my journey and something I often talk to my mentees about is we don't have to be stuck in the suffering. We can honor our feelings, but we can also say, I'm going to set this aside for a moment so that I can go enjoy this other thing for a moment and I will get back to it. It's like the thing with, I'm going a little bit off a tangent here, but it feels aligned. So it's like the thing with venting, people who vent to every single person. I don't think that's very healthy. I feel like you should be venting to someone who could help you process and alchemize those emotions. And then we close the door on it when it's time. But if we go to every he said, she said, and we share these stories, the thing that you're playing with is they're now going to hold you in your energy. Like when I coach
mm,
couples, I say, never talk to anyone other than a trained person about your relationship. Because if you go tell your mom the way your husband did this, your mom's always going to hold your husband in that light. So no matter how much you two evolve,
Man.
your mom's always going to hold him there. And so he's now battling against her energy
Oh,
field too. And so it's like using your energy, using your stories in a really safe and confined way where you can feel them, you can process them, you can alchemize them, and they're not running your life and they're not the only story you're operating from.
so
Right?
like, yeah, but yeah, like everything you said there is magical, and I'm so happy that you said it. It's like what I try to tell people I speak with, clients, what have you. There's two things going on at once. It's a combination, right? It's always a melding, but it's two things going on at once. If you can compartmentalize it, there's a vibrational deal going on, and there's a physical reality story going on. And the more you stay in your physical reality story, the more you keep producing the physical reality story. That is science. That's purely science. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you stare at atoms, like what like there's been tons of these research projects, right, where atoms exist. An individual is staring at them. They show up, they turn away, they leave the room, and the atoms, like, they either disappear or they take different forms, so on and so forth. The person comes back, the atoms show up again. It's like we are shaping our reality, whether we believe we are or not. Okay. And so, yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you're going to vent inside of a physical story, you're going to have a tough road. If you vent for the sake of, and you're clearly in awareness of why you're venting, I'm venting to release, I'm venting to own where I am, and then I'm going to continue to vent to shift the direction. So the venting turns into an ownership of where I now want to go. That's power. That's empowerment. The other part of the venting, if you just do the venting to everybody, that's victim. That's blame. There is no power in that. Like you said earlier, there could be power in the way of I moved from insecurity to blame. So yes, there is a shifting, and there is a more powerful statement you just made in that. Yes, that's great. But we want you to keep going. We want you to keep going. And now, so that's another discussion right there. Well, how do I keep going, or when do I keep going? And the when, again, is up to you. When do you keep going? Do you want to do it in the moment? Does it feel good? Can you keep flowing? Can you keep releasing the resistance to raise your vibration in the moment? If you can, great. If all you can get to is anger, like you said, that's where you leave it alone. Drop it off for the moment. Come back to it later, because guess what? It will come back. You don't need to bring it up. It's gonna show up. That much momentum, that much energy on it in your life, it's showing up in your day-to-day reactions, like all the time. It's gonna show up again. Now you have another opportunity to shift it. But that's the greatness of it. Are you looking at it in a way of like, I have an opportunity here to shift it? Or are you looking at it in as it's a physical story, I'm going to continue to blame, and I'm going to continue to feel like shit? And it's like, we can't make that decision for you. That's the individual, and they have the right to all of it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between intentionality and just spewing for the sake of spewing.
There you go.
And I mean, it happened in our conversation we were having before we started recording too. I had this awareness of for obviously you guys weren't there, so I'll just tell you, Douglas and I were going back and forth about talking about like the desire to date, to open up, to me going into different relationships and the fears that I was having around it. And there came a point in our conversation where I suddenly felt this inner thing. Is this a story I want to keep investing in? And I immediately stopped the conversation. There was no desire within me to keep investing in a story where I was afraid to start dating. And I did just that. I stopped the conversation because it wasn't something I wanted to invest in anymore. And it came with the awareness of, I know how, what we talked about in our last episode, of training your body and your resonance to understand when those different emotions and vibrations are coming in, and do they serve what you're trying to create? And am I taking this into a place that I don't want to be? I see so many clients, they feel their feelings, but then what they do is they start to attach labels and stories to them. And the emotions almost never need, actually, I'm just going to say they never need to have a story told about them. They
Yeah,
can just be felt. It's our
yeah,
own ego that
yeah,
feels the need to
yeah,
say, instead of I'm feeling angry, say, well, Douglas said this that made me feel really angry. So Douglas is a bad person.
yeah,
That's the story that comes from me wanting to defer that emotion and no longer feel and utilize it as a guide. When
yeah,
we can take that accountability Douglas was talking about and say, I am feeling this. What is this showing me? And how do I want to feel? Then we can move out of it while still honoring it. But
yeah.
we're not telling this whole story, because then every time we see Douglas,
Oh
we're going
man,
to think Douglas is bad. And those feelings are going to be born within us again. And
yes.
it's this whole cycle that we use when we attach labels and stories to everything.
Yes. And that's the confusion of our human being experience. When to go vibrational and when to go physical reality. And so what you just said right there is perfect, because you get aware from your physical reality. Now, you could be aware before that if you tune into your emotions and you get really good at that. But if you're not, that's fine, because these physical realities that are showing up in your experience, that's going to tune you in big time, right? Because you get those triggers. Okay, cool. You got the trigger. Step away from the physical story and just go into the vibration of it, the frequency of it, the feeling of it, the emotion of it, the energy of it. And that's it. And why is that it? Because that's the way you shift. You can't shift a physical reality experience that's already going on. It has too much energy, too much momentum, and that is impossible to do. How you shift the physical reality is get at the feeling place of it. And you choose to look at it in a way to create ownership to how you're feeling. And once you've created the ownership, you speak to yourself about yourself in a manner that allows you to shift to now seeing. You could even you could get off the subject completely, but let's say you want to see that physical reality differently. Let's say you do. Then you just vibrationally, frequency, energy, emotionally, you start to look at it differently. You start to see the things of why, or sorry, not the why, the what is of benefit here.
Mm.
How is this working out for me? And as you see those things, it alleviates the resistance inside of it, among it, however you want to word that. And then it can start to shift. That is not an easy thing to do. Like, I want everybody to know we're talking about it as if you snap your fingers and that's what you do.
Mm.
Doesn't work that way. You have to keep practicing it, because some subjects have more momentum. They're more important to you. It takes longer to shift those, and that's okay. But if you practice on something lighter first, you can prove to yourself that you're capable and it does work. Then you can chip away at some of the bigger subjects in your life.
I'm glad you said that too, because I think that the grace and compassion aspect of this is so important. Because, like I was telling you about my experience 16 years ago, I had so much shame around feeling my feelings because of these false perceptions. If you can just say, I'm here, this is an experience I'm having, and you're not even attaching yourself to it, you're just saying, this is an experience I'm having. And as long as I'm here, I'm here. And it's like Douglas said, it could take an hour, day, months, depending on how big this emotion is. It's not just this thing that you're automatically going to alchemize. You
Mhm.
can get to a point where you've mastered it and can do it very quickly. But
Yeah.
especially in the beginning of big, huge activations and triggers, there's this period that you get to have a lot of grace. You get to really be in it, to learn from it. And again, it doesn't swallow you whole. You don't have to stay in this suffering, because we're not attaching these stories. But it's also like you might feel the grief for a long period of time. And as long as you can just allow it to be there, what I found is it dissolves on its own. And
Yes.
you can then, as soon as you start to feel that shift within, do that process that Douglas was talking about of
Yeah.
choosing a better feeling thought, a higher vibrational feeling. But it's not in trying to rush the process. It's giving yourself the time and space, because if you fully feel the grief, it's not going to come back in the same way. Whereas if you push it down and try to move through it fast, you might go
Mm,
into another pattern that's going to bring the grief again, maybe in a different way, right? But it will come back again until it's fully felt and alchemized.
yeah. Totally agree. The one thing I do want to comment on what you said there about the dissolving, right? Is I want to quickly add in, why does it dissolve on its own sometimes? Why does it dissolve? Eventually, everything would dissolve on its own. And why? Because us as human beings and the universe itself, we're love. We're inside a stream of well-being. Our natural state of being is supposed to be love. That's the natural state of being. And so if you're not, it's like what Abraham says about the cork and pushing it under the water. If you're not holding yourself down, you will rise. Your vibration will rise. And so that's why, yes, it can work itself out on its own. But what we do, we get caught in the physical story. And just like you said, we call everybody and their mother up and we vent, and that keeps it active. So if you just literally don't keep it active, your cork will raise and you'll get back to the feeling place that you want to be eventually, you know? The one thing I did want to bring up, because we have it down on our list, and I love this conversation too with the spiritual bypassing, is boundaries and labels, right? And so I don't want to attack both at the same time here, but I just love bringing up boundaries. Okay. And I get it completely, what it means to be a human being and set up boundaries. I get it. Okay. But the deal you got to be careful about is, again, the universe is responding to vibration. It's not responding to your words. So if the boundary is set up from fear that whatever you're setting up the boundary for is going to come back, or you won't be able to handle it, so you got to set up the boundary, that literally is calling it into you. As opposed to, I'll set up this boundary and I'm feeling my empowerment, or I'm feeling my alignment shift for the better in a positive way. Okay, cool. That's your boundary. But the other thing I want to say is, and I'm sorry to break this to you, but boundaries literally don't exist inside the universe. We're a vibrational universe. So there really is, like, these are things, again, human beings make up to explain things, to teach things, to mentor things. And I get that. I get that. But if you're listening to somebody who doesn't understand universal law or energy or vibration or those things, it can get you in trouble in the long run. Might work right away because it's like the 80-20 deal, It's going to work for the 80%. What happened to the 20, right? And so I want to bring that up. It's like, use your boundaries. I understand it. Everyone is where they are. And if boundaries work for you in this current time, that's great. Just feel into while you're making the boundary, so you're aware that you're not running into the same thing that you set up the boundary for in the first place.
I love that you brought that up. I think it's important too. And I love that you clarified, because there was a long time in my path where I had to verbally speak boundaries because there were unsafe people in my life, right? So I had to set up parameters of, if I
Mm,
see this behavior, I will walk away,
mm,
that's really powerful. But the premise here is the same thing we've talked about this whole episode. It's the intentionality behind it. So
yeah,
I had a lot of verbal boundaries with some of my family members for a long time.
mm,
And now I still have these family members in my life. I'm kind of this person in my family who's been this beacon of healing. As they've seen me evolve, they've chose to evolve themselves. And now it's a very felt boundary. It's not something I ever have to say. And my clients say this too all the time, is I feel your energy of when I am crossing like a proverbial line into, because what it is what they're feeling is dissonance. When I'm operating at this frequency of love and they're bringing in anything that is counter to that, all they're feeling is the reflection of my love, and it's being reverberated back to them and what feels like a boundary to them.
Mm,
All I have to do is maintain my frequency,
yes.
and it keeps me, it's almost like in a parallel dimension or universe. And so the boundary, quote unquote, is just a difference in energetic vibration. So there's a time when you get to speak them as you're on your healing journey to get you into a place where you're safe enough to
Yeah.
find this empowerment.
Yeah.
You're going to feel what feels really good. A lot of times I would spew these boundaries, I would feel it in my body, the anger and the rage that was coming with it. And that was
Mm,
totally okay as long as I honored
mm,
the anger and rage within. I wasn't acting on it. I was saying this boundary, but I could feel how mad I was that I had to make the boundary. And that's because what I wanted to operate at from a soul level was love.
mm,
But because I was in relationships that were dissonant with the vibration I wanted to be at, I was kind of being pulled into these different energetic vibrations. So now, as I stand in this frequency, there's no boundaries around me. It's the boundaries other people create when they try to bring a frequency that's not in alignment with mine into my container.
mm.
Is that,
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah?
pretty good. You're pretty good at this.
Well, I mean, it's really, I think it's really powerful to talk about the intentionality behind everything, because we can, like you said, we can speak all the boundaries we want.
Yes.
And if we're coming, like I said, when I was coming from that place of rage, what I was doing was their reaction was ragey back to me. I
Yeah.
was bringing it right back in. And so I had to keep saying the boundary because I was like, "Ugh," I couldn't say it in my power and in my alignment. I
Yeah. Yeah.
had to wait till I was in, when I was rooted and knowing that I was deserving of relationships that were in alignment with me. They
Mm,
no longer were able to approach me in the same way. So I
mm,
could stay in this frequency of love, and they
yeah.
wouldn't spew back on me. And when they did, it was literally just repelled off of me. They could see that I wasn't absorbing it, I wasn't bringing it. And so it would
Love that.
hit them back, and they would either change or walk away from me. And it was as easy as that, right?
Yeah, I love that because like immediately you'd have that hit of like, man, maybe I shouldn't be saying these things. This doesn't feel very good, and it's definitely not affecting them. So why am I trying to be such a mean person right now? Like that doesn't feel very good. I love what you say there. And if they don't want to get in touch with how they're feeling, they quickly move themselves out of the area because they're just looking at for somebody else to beat up
Yeah.
because that's what makes them kind of survive in that feeling place. That's how they're holding themselves, and so that's the best thing they can do for the time being. I think through all our conversation and all the personal work that I've done in my life to bring me to this point now, it's like, man, and I feel the work for me right now is like it's so important. And I'm not saying that in a way where like I gotta figure this out and da, da, da. I'm saying it in a way that it's like it's it's touching me, hitting me. I'm realizing it in such a different place than I used to.
Yeah.
That I just felt like I want to say, like, I hope anyone and everyone who listens to this has the opportunity in their life at least one time to feel what it feels like to embody a deeper understanding. Whatever it is that they're searching for, that they're looking for, that they're wanting in life about understanding of life, about themselves, I really hope they can feel an embodiment, an epiphany one time.
Yeah.
Because I think if you do that one time, that's the addiction. Because that's that sparkle where you're like, wow, I didn't know I could push past the ceiling that I created for myself. And now I have a whole nother ceiling. Oh my God. And in a way, it's like, fuck, I don't want to go through another ceiling. But really, you do.
Hmm. It
You do.
actually gets to be kind of enjoyable. Like now when I approach perceived ceilings, I get really excited,
Yeah.
like it's exciting to evolve, because you can get to a point too when you understand things from whatever human perspective you have, that it almost, for me, for a while got boring, because I was like, I know how this works. I'm over here. I see you. I see this behavior. I know the vibration, and I'm over here in this frequency of love, and it's perfect. And it's also like, I've been here for a while. And so it's like these next evolutions kind of get more and more exciting, because it's like, oh, wait, it's not over. It's not always going to be just this state of neutrality of just like living in this frequency. It gets to expand and evolve. And
Always.
I think that kind of leads us in. Let's wrap it up by talking about labels and the intentionality behind the labels we put on things.
Yeah. So for me, I do the best I can. Again, I'm not perfect at any of this, but I do the best I can to never speak in labels. I just speak from, like, when I'm dealing with a person, a client, what have you, it's where are we in the moment, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because the labels are for our human brain. It's for these human beings to understand something, and it's like it's okay to not put it into concrete words sometimes. Because if you put it into concrete words, there's your physical story. And now how do we get out of the physical story? So you're making it so much tougher on yourself sometimes
Yeah.
when you label something. Now, again, the same way we talked about boundaries, sometimes labeling something for yourself brings you to a place of awareness where you're like, I'm glad I've identified what this is. And it's a releasing, right? And I think that's awesome too. But just be aware of when the label is not assisting you anymore. Because if the label turns into a belief that is not feeling very good for you, that means that belief, that label is ready to be released so you could step in to who you are now. So just be aware of the labels you're using and are they productive for you? That's all.
And I think it has to come back again to that weight and intentionality behind it. And why am I choosing to frame it in this way? Whether it's labeling an emotion, whether it's labeling something good or bad or right or wrong, right? It's just coming back to that state of, this is an experience that I'm having. And that's
Yeah,
literally it. This is an experience that I'm having. I
yeah,
think that that's a really beautiful way to just kind of keep it neutral,
yeah,
right? And to have the experience and let it be what it is, and not make it any bigger than
yeah,
it is.
yeah. Any bigger than you're already feeling it, right?
Right.
For sure, because we're all really good at judging ourselves.
Mm. So powerful. I love today's episode. And you guys, next week we are diving in to everything contrast, why we experience it, how to move through it, how to develop a better relationship with the contrast that shows up in our lives. So tune in for our last episode in this series. It's been so fun, Douglas, to go down this road with you.
Yeah, super fun. Thank you.
Thank you guys. As always, breathe deep and plan on miracles. See you next time.